about aspects such as aspects such as contained in these literary theories of your material. Okay, so this is precise given for you. Okay, and if you want to have some extra read, you can very well go for text, other reference books. But I don't think at this point you need, when you'll be quite held up with other responsibilities and work, because you are already too much. I hopefully you are too much into your work, into your service. So I think you have the option here of studying your SLM.
Ma'am, actually, not just from the perspective of examination, but also from the perspective of assignment. When I was doing assignment, ma'am, I found out that like the study material is not sufficient because I needed more material to read so that I could write at least 4 pages for 20 mark of question.
Now, listen, Habiba. I think it's Habiba, right? You're speaking.
Yes, ma'am.
Habiba, if we talk personally, then I did this long back in my PG time. Okay, this literary criticism. But have I stopped after that? I haven't. I have to explore more and more and more certain new things, new findings. Also, I find as a maturer person. Okay, so you cannot stop at any point of time if you are into literature. But suppose there are people here who are working in schools, okay, and or there are people, there senior people also coming every year in this IGNU, and they need promotions. They are they are supposed to school teachers, and they are supposed to be principal, so they need a PG degree. So why do they need so much of hard work and toil in order to learn? Just give me 1 second. uh, did you get what I'm saying, Habiba?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes,
Mm.
yes, ma'am. It
But
suffices to my question. Thanks.
but see, I'm into this profession because I'm teaching in UG PG level, and I need to mature myself as a teacher. So I have to go on reading before I come to this class. Also, I have to go on checking what is there in your material. So I teach in regular classes. They those books are broad, and you have to refer to this book and that book and that book. When I come to IGNU class, there are typical materials. Again, I have to see that because we have got the instruction that we have to remain with your material so that you will be able to connect with the teachers. So as a profession, if you're into PG and UG, or if you are literature enthusiast, then you go on and on and on with your reading. But there are professionals who are in other fields for promotion purpose they need. Okay, so it depends on how we take our profession, or if you are interested in literature, go for it. We are there to help you. Anything
Thank you,
else?
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Preeti, you have anything else to say?
Yes, ma'am. Just wanted to ask you, just to support my answers,
Huh.
like every critic had a theory, their own way of
Mhm.
understanding literature.
Mhm.
So
Right.
if I have to elongate my answer, is it
Huh.
not possible to have examples of a book or a poem or anything that we can put in there and kind of support or give length to our responses? Will that
Yes,
count?
Priti, of course. But if in case you didn't do that, okay, you prefer doing that. Abiba prefers doing that because she wants to learn more and more. You're most welcome. However, for your IGNU examinations, if you remain confined to your materials also, we as examiner, we give you full credit. Okay, we do not judge you if you do not bring your sources from external materials. It's okay. Okay, for IGNU, you get that freedom that you can remain confined to your material. Okay,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is what I can say as an examiner also of IGNU papers.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Mhm. But as always, literature, if you go on reading more and more, it's just like putting more and more sugar in your tea. It gets sweeter and sweeter.
Right,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah. Shall we move on to I.A. Richards? Just tell me this. We are in which block? If I start with I.A. Richards. I think Preeti, you're following. Tell me, where are we if we are starting with IE Richards? Because I have an
Ma'am,
online.
new criticism, I think it's block 4.
It's block four. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, right. Because yeah, I have got this online material, and there are no blocks mentioned. It goes on and on and on. Okay. So this is we are in IA Richards, and as you are saying, probably in block four. All
Block
right.
4, unit 1, ma'am.
Unit one. Right. Okay, now we will see I.A. Richards first of all, and then that will be followed by T.S. Eliot. And these are considered, these two people, they are considered as the father of literary criticisms. Okay, and we will see here how and what they are saying, what idea do they have about literature, and what fresh critical perspectives they are bringing in to the area of literature, and why and what they have written which is worthy of reading for us. Okay, and what makes our understanding clear about literature, and also sometimes we find these criticisms little difficult to understand, because if I was in my PG classes, I found this very difficult. Okay, Wordsworth was all right, romanticism was there, they spoke about simplicity, industrial revolution was getting in, people were distressed with that kind of materialization of living standards. Okay, and there were people who did not like this kind of materialization of lifestyle, so they moved again themselves back to the rural settings. And when you go to rural settings, there are things which are full of simplicity. So Wordsworth is very much highlighting about simplicity. It was as easy as anything. Okay, but when we are coming slowly to these modern times, things get complicated, because you can always, when you read literature, you have to see the background. In modern times, you saw things were quite complex, lifestyle had become very complex. Okay, and you see that things have already been materialized. People look at things with a very material point of view, materialistic point of view. Okay, and then there are world wars. Okay, world wars, they see destructions. Okay, they see complications of life and existence, they see negativity, they also see the initiation of pollution also. Okay, because very often you see these writers, poets, they're talking about smoke coming out from the industrial waste. Okay, as if the chimney is bellowing out smoke. Okay, so now they are starting to talk about the natural beauty which is gradually getting lost. Okay, so this is the observation of modern life there that they are speaking about. Okay, they see a lot of betrayal in relationships. There is no more simplicity in mutual relationships and understanding. So this is what is modernity and the negative side of modernity. Okay, so the people who were sensitive literary people, they addressed all these things. Okay, like T.S. Eliot is saying in Wasteland. Okay, many other poets, and then war poets are also coming. They are talking about the chaos of war and the loss of war. They say that even though you win certain war, but still there is loss. Okay, so no one wins 100%. So you can see that so many new ideas have come here. Things have become very complicated here. So we can see these theories are also their reflections of literature and of novels and poetries, different genres of literature. Different genres of literature have the reflections of the society. So you can see it's a kind of step, a hierarchy which is built. Okay, and the criticism, they're reacting accordingly and bringing up the theories accordingly. Was I clear with you, learners? Could you understand? Now, I will start with certain aspects here of criticism. We'll see what I.A. Richard is saying. Now, there is a book called New Criticism, published in 1941. Here, um, John Crow Ransom, he starts his chapter on I.A. Richards. Okay, and he says that discussion of the new criticism must start with Mr. Richards. Okay, so he says, so just what I told you just now, that I.A. Richards and then Eliot, they are the fathers of new criticism. So John Crow Ransom also acknowledges Richards to be the initiator of new criticism. Okay, and he says that the new criticism very nearly began with him. So it was I.A. Richards who brought the fresh perspective of new criticism. Okay. Um, if you see new criticism, and if you see, this idea of criticism, it was which was brought about by I.A. Richards. It is considered, through his new criticism, I.A. Richards is considered to be the most important theoretician. Okay, and he belonged to the first half of 20th century, means from 1900 to mid 20th, means 1950s or so on, 40s and 50s. Okay, now we will start with his theory. First, we'll discuss about his literary criticism. Okay. Um, Positive criticism, sorry. He had rejected this idea of positive criticism. And then we are going to see about a little bit of his biographical background. And then we'll see his work called Principles of Literary Criticism and Practical Criticism. Okay, then there are different subheadings, so we'll go through that precisely, and then we'll go move on to T.S. Eliot and other writers. Now, what do you mean by positive criticism? You need to understand this. So, positive criticism is actually a philosophy. Okay, it's a thought, it's a philosophy. And first, it was coined in the work of French philosopher Auguste Comte. Okay. Auguste, Comte, Comte. Um, his book's name is Cours de Philosophie Positive, and it was published in between 1830 to 1842. 1830 to 1842. Okay. This French philosopher has published his book. Now, what is this work based on? This his work, this French writer's philosophy was to extend to humanities the methods and principle of natural sciences. So he wanted to talk in detail about the methods and principles of natural sciences. Okay, and he was called the positivist philosopher. Okay, and as a positivist philosopher, he was very much bent into discussing facts instead of ideas. Okay, wanted to he wanted to place his philosophy, which would be more factual rather than relating to ideas. Okay, and then he talks about how these facts come. Okay. He doesn't say that why these facts come, but he says how these facts come. Okay. And he said that there are, knowledge is so broad, according to this French philosopher. He says knowledge is so broad, but it doesn't come wholly from certain evidences. Okay, so there are not certain evidences to so much of knowledge. Okay, facts are there, but sometimes we do not have the idea of its origin of these facts. So this positivism in literary criticism is nicely and clearly defined by Tin. Okay, he says that positive criticism is very much about race, milieu, and movement. He says, okay. Now, what I. Richards has to say about all these ideas, we'll be discussing that in detail. I.A. Richard, actually his full name is Ivor Armstrong Richards. All right. He was born in 1893 and he died in 1979. And he was a highly educated person. He got his education from Clifton College in Bristol, and then he went to another college, Magdalene College in Cambridge. So he was Cambridge educated, and in Cambridge he studied philosophy. In 1919 he started to teach, okay, in a very newly made school of English in Cambridge. So he became a teacher in one of the schools under Cambridge University. And in 1926 he was a fellow of Magdalene College. He got fellowship in Cambridge. Okay. And then if you see, it is quite intriguing, quite interesting to know that for some time he went to China and he taught there in China. In 1939, again he moved to the US. Okay. And he started teaching at Harvard. And he became a university professor after his retirement, emeritus. After his retirement, he was teaching in Harvard. Okay, in an honorary position. Now, he had published 3 volumes of poetry. Okay, I think we teach, I think, in UG classes some of his I.A. Richards' poetry, but they're not so popular as his literary criticism. Okay, he is very famous for his literary criticism more than through his poems. Okay, now Richard himself, he was a scholar of semantics that belongs to the language area. Okay, and he had his contribution also in semantics with his colleague C.K. Ogden. He had formulated basic English. Okay, now he has got some very important works of criticism. We quite often read this. The meaning of meaning is important. It was published in 1923. The meaning of meaning. Please remember this. It was published in 1923, and this was written in collaboration with his friend Ogden. And meaning of meaning is a very important contribution for linguistics. Okay, I told you, no, he's a language scholar, so it was meaning of meaning was a great contribution to the area of linguistics. Then he wrote Principles of Literary Criticism. It was published in 1924, and then it was followed by Science and Poetry, published in 1926. Then he wrote Practical Criticism, published in 1929. Then Coleridge on Imagination, published in 1934. So all these principal works you have to remember when you are talking about R.I.A. Richards. Okay. So he thought that literary criticism has to be very objective. Okay. Now, if you look at a little bit of background of I.A. Richards, then you will know that, during those days, uh, there was a lot of development of psychology. Okay. Freud was giving his theory. Psychology was, brimming at that time. And people wanted to, these artists and literary people, they wanted to evaluate art in terms of psychology. Okay. Now, a little bit of psychological aspect came into art. Okay. And I.A. Richards was very much interested in psychology and he promoted psychological theory of value. Okay. So, according to him, this theory of value um, was, actually outdated because new researches had come out in psychology, and this theory of value had become outdated. But I.A. Richard, he gave certain comments on language, and he gave comments on the practical analysis of poetry, okay, which brought a revival of this idea of a theory of value. Okay. And uh, and his writing and his idea on theory of value, which is related to analyzing poetry, it got enormous influence on Anglo American criticism in the 20th century. Okay. Now, first his work is Principles of Literary Criticism. And in his work, Principles of Literary Criticism, Richards is trying to establish a theoretical framework for criticism And he said that this theory of literary criticism should not have any sort of subjectivity. Okay, there shouldn't it shouldn't have any emotional aspects. He said that it should be very objective and it should be very realistic. Okay, so he uh, gave his observations, and he gave his lot of reflections also in principles of literary criticism. Okay, and then he questions one important aspect of literature. He says that what is the value of the arts and what is the place in the system of human endeavor. Means, what is the value of art? Why are we reading art, literature? What is its value in modern life? Okay, so through this, IA Richards is actually trying to reevaluate the use of art in our life. All right, so to get the answer to his question, he gives a uh, psychological theory of art. So he says that art is valuable. Okay, so you can see that these people are propagating art and literature in their own ways. Similarly, I. Richard says that earlier people said that art has got a lot of emotional connection. It stirred the mind. Earlier, prior to that, people said that philosophy and a poet must be the quality of a king, isn't it? Now, in modern times, it says that art should be based on psychological theories, certain psychological theories. So, it says that art is very valuable because it drives our impulses. Certain impulses of ours are driven through art. Okay. Then he moves on with his idea. He says that in this chapter, Phantom Aesthetic State, he says that no, there is no idea of special aesthetic state. Okay, he says that there are modern aesthetics, and modern aesthetics, as I was telling you yesterday, also, it was started with Kant. Okay, and now I.A. Richards is rejecting this, dismissing this kind of idea, and he says that there's a, uh, you know, that modern aesthetics which Kant had said. He had said that there are certain kind of pleasure which are universal, which are unintellectual, and they should not get confused with the pleasure of sense or ordinary emotions. So he says that there are two aspects of pleasure. Okay, one aspect of pleasure is universal. Okay, and it is unintellectual. Okay, everyone can feel that kind of pleasure in art. Another is that for another aspect of pleasure is that there are pleasure of senses and ordinary emotions according to Kant. Okay, and it was believed that art experience was a special kind of experience. Okay, because art had a class. Has a class. So it has got if you're reading art, it has got, and when you're experiencing art, it has got a special kind of experience, special kind of pleasure you derive out of it, because art has got a different class and sophistication. Now, what Richard is saying, Richard is dismissing these ideas. Richard is saying that there's no special mode. Okay, and he says that this aesthetic experience that you're gaining out of reading literature or experiencing art, it is nothing new. It is or it is nothing different kind of thing. It is nothing different. There is nothing different about it. He says that it is very similar, and experiencing art is very ordinary. All right. So Richard is using his idea very graphically, and he explains his point. I'm quoting what he says. He says, when we look at a picture or read a poem or listen to music, we are not doing something quite unlike what we were doing on our way to the gallery or when we dressed in the morning. What is he trying to say? Again, he's saying that art is imitation, art is the mimicry of the real life. So he says that why it is extraordinary? No, it is ordinary. When you suppose now, when you sit and see a movie in the Netflix, okay, or in the day you are reading some poem, somebody, some poet's birthday is there, and your friend posts you some WhatsApp message, and there's a poetry of some great poet, and you're reading that. Or maybe you love listening to music, you're listening music. Is it something different or out of the world? Is it not some way connect to the day-to-day actions you are doing, to the outer world that you are seeing? So it is same. It is nothing different. Okay, he says it is ordinary. He mentions that these ordinary activities, like when you are wearing your clothes, or you are walking in your suppose in your footpath you are walking. Okay, so he says that it is as ordinary as that. So in order to emphasize his point that art is art experience is not of a different kind. Art experience is more complex, he says. Okay, art experience is not extraordinary, but it is complex. Okay, and those who believe in this special aesthetic state, okay, uh, they will have a different kind of value for art. So Richard believed that this kind of aesthetic experiences, they have some, great value. Where I was. Give me 1 second, students. I'm getting a call. Yeah. So what I was saying, we were discussing what Richard is saying. Now Richard is saying that this kind of special, aesthetic will give you a special kind of feeling. So Richard says that this kind of aesthetic experience, it has got an intrinsic value. It is possible to analyze art experience. Okay, according to him, you can analyze your art experience, you can examine what value it has in your ordinary life. See, this doesn't say anything extraordinary. So it's as simple as that. Okay, please try to understand this. He says that art is nothing extraordinary, nothing whatever these authors are saying or high thing. No, it is very ordinary because you can connect it with your ordinary life. All right, and you can examine it with your ordinary life. You can connect it. That is art. Okay, and it doesn't have any special position which cuts off from our ordinary life. So actually it's trying to say art means when you connect yourself, when you are an ordinary person also, see very much little bit close to those romantics. They also said no, ordinary people, ordinary life also can connect itself. So he is also talking about that, but he's talking from psychological level. Okay, so he says that you can connect yourself. Okay, and this is nothing extraordinary about it. Are you getting my point? What I'm saying? Are you able to understand? He says that it is ordinary. Okay, and see, this is what till now we are feeling when you see movies. Okay, there are movies which really work, which become a hit or super hit because people are able to connect it. Whereas if people are not able to connect, okay, it shows weird things and weird lifestyle, and you can see nowadays there's a star children are coming, and what they are doing drama you cannot understand, you cannot connect. They are showing some high life, high society. You are not able to connect. What happens? That art fails. That movie fails. Okay, so when you connect with the ordinary, whereas if you see simple movies, that movie had come, you know, I forgetting that name, Lapata Ladies. It was so simple. It was about village life, about our Indian life, where till today we have to remain highly veiled and covered. Okay, we get lost also, but it is our tradition that we have to completely remain veiled. If you see your husband or not, doesn't matter, but you have to keep that parda on your face. So it was so connectable. Okay, it was so ordinary. The picture that it showed, the graphical representation was so ordinary. One small village and one small village station, so accurate. So we were able to connect it, okay, with our ordinary life. So that is art, where we can respond, where we can connect, where we can feel all the vibes. Okay, so that is what only I Richard is saying. So, according to Richard, I'm quoting, he says the two pillars upon which a theory of criticism must rest are an account of value and an account of communication. Now, when he's talking about criticism, he says that there are two major pillars of criticism. Okay, the two major theory of criticism. One is that it is based on account of value. Okay, second, it should have an account of communication. Okay, communication means there should be the the speaker, and there should be a receiver. So Richard says that human mind is very developed, and it is developed because it is an instrument of communication. Our mind is very developed because I can speak, you can understand. Okay, not only the literal word, but I am able to communicate my emotion also to you. Okay, my analytical perspective also I can pass on to you. Okay, or when we are suppose we are not there face to face, but suppose I make a video call, and if I make such a sad face, okay, that you will start crying. Okay, means I'm an artist, and the kind of emotion I bring in my face, you respond exactly that way. So, what we are doing, what talent do we have? We have the talent of communication, not only through words, but also through our gestures, but also through our expressions. Are you getting what I'm saying, learners?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then he says that I'm trying to give some examples and make you understand. So he says that artist has to be very conscious. Conscious of what? That he has got a supreme capability of communication. Okay. He says that artist is concerned with getting the work right. As I told you, if I'm trying to make you sad, I'm making such kind of face that you also feel sad. Or sometimes I'm making some jokes. Okay. And then you are able to understand the joke, and you are moved to laughing. Only then that is art. Suppose I'm trying to do some comic thing and you feel it ridiculous, or you don't feel like laughing at my jokes. So I have failed as an artist. That is what he's saying. Artist has to understand it right and understand communication in a right way, and he has to pass on in the right way whatever expression, whatever feel he is trying to infect to the other. Okay. So he says that whether it is a poem or a play or a painting also, the artist has to get fully involved in making the work, his own experience, and exactly he passes that experience to his spectators or to his receivers. All right. So he says that there is always he borrows Freud's theory, says that there is always a subconscious level. Okay. And he says that getting the work right for the artist, it involves great communicative power. Okay. And he terms it as efficacy for communication. So he says that great communicative power is efficacy for communication. However, he tries to move his spectators, his audience. Okay, he does it through his talent in communication. All right. Now, um, we shall discuss on what is this practical criticism of his. Now, it is actually one of his lectures at Cambridge. Okay, in Cambridge, he took a class, and he tried to see the. Uh, uh, Actually, he gave it a task to his students to describe their responses to one set of 13 poems. Okay, there was no poet's name. That unknown poetry appreciation he gave to his students. Okay, now students had no clue as to which century the poem belonged, who is the poet, okay, and what background information that they can give. So I.A. Richards gave them 1 week time to give analysis of those 13 poems. Okay, and he selected 13 poems only. He called that selection protocols. Okay, and this he did as an experiment for his book. So he took a note. Students took time. They were helpless, clueless about the poet, about the poet's background, about the poem's background. No idea, absolutely. So somehow they did their work. They returned it back their work to I.A. Richards. Okay. Now what he did, he read all those analysis. Then he jotted down some errors that the students made. Okay, and these errors would help the students uh, bring reforms in their style of writing. So Richard says that while giving this kind of experiment, this kind of work to students, he had three objectives. First, he needed to document the contemporary state of culture. He needed to know the contemporary state of culture of that place. Then he said that another objective was to provide new technique for responding to poetry. Okay, no background information, no idea about the poet. So this is a new technique for responding to poetry. Third was, he said, to reform the teaching of literature, to bring some kind of changes in literature. So with this idea, he started a practical criticism book. Okay. and there he analyzes different mistakes of interpretation. Okay, and then of interpretation and evaluation. He said that there are certain errors when we are interpreting and evaluating certain work, and this mistake he finds out through that analysis of the students, and that is why he writes. Okay, and he tries to identify those errors and tries to solve the problems and give the cause of those mistakes. So he says that first of all, when you do not know the poet, so what, you can read the poem and you can give your judgment. But in that point of time, the students had got so much accustomed with connecting with the poet that they had developed a low level of critical competence. Okay, they were Cambridge students, very highly intelligent students, but still they were so much accustomed with analyzing with the poet and with the background that when the poet and the background was removed, their critical response was poor. Okay, so he gives his idea of practical criticism, which you can make even though you do not have any idea of the poet or the background of the poem. Okay, so he says that you can read your poem, your piece of art only for art. Okay, you need not go running after the interpretations or the background. Okay, you can read it as it is and give your own assumptions. This was his uh, idea of critical work. Okay, so Richard actually he does not say, he said that he does not recommend unhistorical reading. Okay, he did not say that you should isolate yourself from the context. But what he's trying to say here, he's saying that you have to give more emphasis on the text. Okay, because the text is an autonomous body. Okay, and you read it and you can interpret it in your own thousand ways because it is a work of creativity. So a critic also has to be creative in order to analyze the work. It's okay, you've got complete freedom. Do not remain stuck always to the background information. Read the book as an autonomous entity. Okay, and he gives the example of practical criticism, and he says that this is a new critical idea, and this must be taken seriously by the modern students. Okay, and you have to read, you give the uh, give the status of a book as a independent entity. Okay, don't just connect things, read the book as it is. Okay, so he had what he had done as a mark of proof, as a mark of example, he did analysis of many specific texts. Okay, in a very uh, in his own way, in his own style, and his literary theory was quite original. Okay, and he completely rejected all those earlier aesthetics that people had in his work. And then in his analysis or in his criticism of certain work, he completely reduced uh, the work of art. He took it to the mental state. He read it from the psychological level. Okay, uh, then he also spoke that no, every time you cannot connect emotion to in every work of art. No, there are many works of art which you can take it to your psychology rather than to your emotions. Okay, so these were some very major idea, and his practical criticism, he very carefully gives a distinction between the sense, feeling, tone, and intention of text. Okay, he gives a very clear cut differences between sense, feeling, tone, and intention of the text. And when he talks about rhythm and meter in poems, he clearly shows that sound and meaning, meter and sense, they cannot be separated. Sound is connected to meaning. Okay, meter is connected to the senses. Okay, and he says that content of certain work, it cannot be discussed in isolation from expression. Content and expression, they are connected. Okay, now we'll move on to the next critic, T.S. Eliot. Now, in the T.S. Eliot, his full name is Thomas Stearns Eliot, born in 1888, died in 1965. Okay, very recent. And he is the one of the most influential English poet of 20th century, very famous poet. Okay, and not only for famous poet, he has got famous, very substantial critical point of view also. It is very significant. And hmm. So he was also highly educated. He was a student of Harvard University. He passed out Harvard in 1906. Okay, he got his MA degree also in 1911, and he was doing his doctoral thesis also, PhD. And in 1912, he got appointed as an assistant at Harvard. Okay, but by that time he was highly influenced by those symbolists. The symbolists were very famous during those times, and he started writing poems, following one of the famous poets of their time, Jules Laforge. Okay, then he spent 1 year, 1910 to 1911, in Paris. In 1914, he joined a college under Oxford University. Then he settled in London. He became a member of church also, Anglican Church, and he took British citizenship in 1927. Okay, because he had American heritage, but later he settled as British citizen. Okay, his life was very complicated because for some time he was working in a bank also. Then he worked as an editor with publishing firm Faber and Faber, very famous. In 1922, he was the founder of the Criterion is a quarterly magazine. Okay, and then he published his very famous The Wasteland in the inaugural issue of the Criterion. Okay, in 1924, he published famous work, Homage to John Dryden. Okay, and then he continued his studies of Dryden, and he tried to read and get more idea on metaphysical poets. Okay, then there were many other famous works coming on the way. His famous criticism, The Sacred Wood, was published in 1920. The Use of Poetry and the Use of Criticism, published in 1933. Notes Towards the Definition of Culture, published in 1949, and Poetry and Poets, 1957. So, and he was the Nobel laureate also, that he received in 1948. Okay. Now, his is very important because he talks about uh, tradition and individual talent. This was published in 1919, a very famous critical work, and this is trying to show tradition and individual talent, is trying to say about poetry and the importance of tradition. Now, again, he goes back. See, he has made his background study. Metaphysical, he has read. Dryden, he has read. Now, he is connecting tradition, poetry, and the importance of tradition. So, Eliot emphasizes on the need for critical thinking. He also says you need critical thinking, like I.A. Richards. Okay, critical thinking is needed. Criticism is inevitable as breathing. Okay, criticism is inevitable as breathing. You have to criticize if you're living in the society. We also say na that criticism is the backbone of a society. Okay, so he says similar thing, that it is just as spontaneous as reading, breathing. And he says that it is quite unfortunate that tradition is mentioned with certain dark implications. Okay, and when we say poet is too traditional, So we are quite often little bit pessimistic about the poet and his ideas. So he here in tradition of an individual talent is questioning the habit of praising a poet. Okay, for those elements in his work which are more individual. Okay, which were quite different and unique from others. Okay, so he is questioning actually that why do you need to praise certain individuality and difference. So according to Eliot, even the most individual part of poet's work may be those which are most alive with the influence of his poetic ancestors. He says that no, there is no individual thing. Okay, again he's saying that there is imitation, but according to him, the imitation is from the past literature, from poetic ancestors, from your poetic grandfathers. You must have inherited some influence. Okay, you cannot say work completely individual work because there is always an influence of tradition. Okay, now, students, I would stop here today. I don't think you'll have next class because yeah, Tapas sir was telling me yesterday only that from yesterday and to today he won't be there. He'll be continuing from tomorrow. So today I stop my class here. Tomorrow again I will continue with T.S. Eliot. I have to go very broadly with these critics because they're very important. Okay, so just we'll continue with T.S. Eliot tomorrow. Okay, so for now I log out. We'll discuss tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.